It is March 1193. 1,000 soldiers are laying siege to Windsor Castle. 90-kilogram stones flung some 300 meters by trebuchets crash into the castle's stone walls, which in some places are as much as 4 meters thick. The castle is held by men loyal to Prince John. The besiegers have been sent by Richard the Lionheart's regents as they attempt to stop a coup launched by the king's younger brother. For you see, John, the youngest of Henry II's 4 sons, was never meant to be king, something the prince knew and deeply resented. But a series of events has brought him within a heartbeat of the throne. First, John's eldest brother Henry, known as the Young King, died in 1183 while leading a rebellion against his father. Next, Geoffrey, the second eldest, was trampled to death in a tournament in 1186. This left only a childless Richard, who had inherited the throne in 1189, standing between John and the crown. John seized his chance when Richard was captured on his way home from crusade and was held for ransom. As William of Newburgh observed, setting at naught his fidelity to his brother, John most shamefully declared himself Richard's enemy, and even spread rumors that the king had died. John's gambit ended in failure. Badly damaged, Windsor Castle surrendered on the 17th of May, followed by other strongholds. John fled to the French court. Knocked back, but still power-hungry, he continued to conspire with the French king Philip Augustus. He even offered Richard's captor, the Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI, money to keep Richard imprisoned. There was almost no low to which John wouldn't sink. After his regency government paid the financially crippling ransom, Richard was released from captivity, and after a brief return to England, set off for Normandy to confront his younger brother and the French king. John surrendered himself to Richard and begged for forgiveness, which he duly received. Richard remarked that, despite being 27 years old, John was a child left with bad guardians. Attempting to buy John's loyalty and appease his ambition, Richard gifted John a wealthy wife, lands, and castles, but no real power. But in a final blow, Richard named his nephew Arthur as successor, the infant son of his brother Geoffrey, living in Brittany under the protection of French King Philip II. 5 years later, though, Richard was dead, struck by a crossbolt while besieging a castle in France, and John finally had his wish. The prince, who had been insultingly called Lackland, was now the ruler of a vast territory, stretching from Hadrian's Wall to the Pyrenees. In fact, at the beginning of his reign, John ruled more of France than the King of France. Like the Angevin monarchs before him, John ruled with the principle of viae voluntas, force and will. The king was answerable only to God, but being a truly great king required honor, the ability to inspire loyalty from his barons, and strategic military skill. John had no honor, was untrustworthy, and in the ultimate test of medieval kingship, winning battles, he failed miserably. John was not the only Angevin with a claim to the throne. Arthur of Brittany, supported by King Philip of France, was now a teenager and John's sole rival. Arthur launched a daring campaign to seize the throne, even besieging the castle holding his grandmother. But in one of John's few victories, the king captured and imprisoned his nephew. Arthur may have expected John to act honorably and to forgive him, but unlike Richard, who had forgiven John's uprising, John, either by his own hand or by his order, had the young prince murdered. This dishonorable act shocked European opinion and poisoned John's reputation. John's kingdom was almost immediately under threat from the French king, who had long dreamed of dismantling and seizing parts of the great Angevin inheritance built and bequeathed by Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. Richard had managed to hold back the French tide, but John was no Lionheart. His paranoia and cruelty and untrustworthiness lost him local allies, and piece by piece, King John was beginning to look more like old Lackland. In raising funds to recover his crumbling inheritance, John used every financial trick and loophole he could find, taxing his barons to the brink of rebellion. However, his efforts were to end in disaster. After a resounding defeat at the Battle of Bouvines in July 1214, and signaling his intention to raise even more money, a group of barons renounced their oaths of allegiance and marched on London. John had failed to secure his lands abroad and was rapidly losing them at home. When the capital fell to the rebels without a fight, John withdrew to Windsor Castle. The two sides then met at nearby Runnymede, where John was forced to agree to a set of baronial demands that came to be known as Magna Carta, the Great Charter of Liberties. The king was no longer solely answerable to God, but power was all John had ever wanted, and he wasn't about to share it. He immediately went back on his word. A full-blown civil war erupted, and Windsor Castle was once more besieged. Only this time, in a twist, the besiegers were French. The rebel barons had appealed to Prince Louis of France, Henry II's grandson-in-law, to intervene, offering him the crown in return for his support. Louis landed in Kent, was crowned in Richmond, and sent a force to besiege Windsor. This siege, like the first, lasted 2 months, with siege towers, trebuchets, and undermining all employed to break the defenders. The siege was only lifted when John, who returned to the scene after fighting in Wales, feigned an attack that drew the French away to the east. John's military fortunes, for a time, seemed to be turning. John fought a scorched earth campaign against the rebel barons, prepared to destroy his own kingdom in order to hold on to it. And the strategy seemed to be working. However, the grueling campaign to defeat the rebel barons and expel the French took its toll, and John died on the 19th of October 1216, of either dysentery, exhaustion, or both. The crown now passed to John's 9-year-old son, Henry III, with William Marshal, one of the most respected knights in the kingdom, acting as regent. Sensing Louis now posed more of a threat to their interests than the boy Henry, many rebel barons switched sides. This, combined with decisive victories for the Marshal at Lincoln and Sandwich, saw the rebellion collapse, and Louis returned to France. The survival of the Angevin line depended on more than Marshal's military victories, though. In perhaps his shrewdest move, the regent reissued, in Henry's name, that charter sealed at Runnymede. Stripped of its most radical clauses, Magna Carta was now a royally endorsed manifesto, a promise of good government. However, like his father, it was a promise that Henry came to break, resulting in a Second Barons' War, and for a third time, in 1263, the quiet of Windsor to be disturbed by the rumbling approach of soldiers and siege engines.